I'm Crickets, and welcome back to I Have a Story. In my last video, I talked about one of the places I lived when I was a teenager that had an impact on my life. And one of those was our freshman year of high school. And as a kid and growing up in the neighborhood in the house that I showed you that I'd lived in one of my previous videos, uh, my best friend was a couple years older than me, and he had a sister that was my age. It's actually the same house that I talked about with the propane heater on the wall in the basement. A lot of stories I can talk about there. Um, but as mine and his sister's freshman year of high school, he's 2 years older than us. I spent a lot of time at their house because my house and living with my parents was a bad situation and everybody knew it, and that was one of the houses I stayed at a lot when I was young. But their mom and stepdad, they had a 3-year-old sister at the time. The mom and stepdad had a child together, and they said, "Hey, we're going on vacation. We'll be back in a couple weeks," and left a couple $100 on the kitchen table and left to go on vacation. Only they never came back. And eventually, we couldn't afford all of it. I'm not sure what all took place on their end, but we ended up in a house in downtown Toledo that was owned by a church at the time, and it was an interesting house all the way around. One, doing the research, found out it used to be an underground railroad house, and it used to be down on the river, and they actually moved the house up off the river up onto Superior Street and turned it into a church. And then it was a church for some time, and then it ended up being, well, our residence for a while. And then I found out later on in life it ended up turning into a halfway house. So the pastor, knowing our situation and that we weren't old enough to have a lease and have a place to live, it knew we didn't have anywhere to go. He rented us the bottom half of the house, and the upstairs had a couple of apartments, a shared bathroom, a shared kitchen, and then the old cathedral was still up there. But that house was also right in the middle of a Mexican gang neighborhood. It was all gangs down there, and this is back in the days of the Bloods and the Crips. And this would have been, what, roughly around 1990? I remember my friend, he wouldn't come outside. And I smoked and wasn't allowed to smoke in the house, and I was, what, early 15 at the time. I'd sit out sit on the porch, smoke cigarettes, and you need to get in the house. I always remember him I watch you take a minute off of your life, or 3 minutes, or 6 minutes, or whatever it was. I watch you take X amount of minutes off your life every time I see you smoke a cigarette. And he tried to get me to quit, and I really wish I would have. But my life has just been one nightmare after another, and I can't get to a spot where I can relax and just live life like a normal human being. But being early 15, I learned the street life pretty quick. I next door neighbor, there was a beautiful woman who lived there, and she was a woman. And she'd be outside, I'd be outside, we'd just talk, and we started hanging out. Well, come to find out, her man was actually in prison, and he was like the kingpin of the neighborhood. And she introduced me to the neighborhood and all the people. So many stories I could tell. They taught me how to jack cars. Not that I went out jacking cars, but they taught me how to do it. So did my high school teacher. Oh, more stories for later on. But I remember my friend, man, what are you doing out there talking to these people? They're crazy. You're going to get killed. If I'm stuck living here, I'm going to get to know my neighbors. I'm going to know the people around me. I'm not going to hide in fear of them. So many people today, no matter what neighborhood you live in, so many people today hide in fear of their neighbors. I remember meeting her mom, and her mom, you need to get with this white boy and get up out of this neighborhood, get up out of this life. What are you going to do with a 15-year-old? Oh, I'm telling you, people, my life has been something else. And obviously, as a teenager, a lot of women, not just teenage girls, women in my life. Again, when you're that young and you don't have anywhere, you don't have a family, you're me, I'm a social person. I'm going to be out talking no matter who, where I'm talking. I'm meeting people. So I only lived down there for a year, less than a year, probably 5, 6 months. He never talked to his parents again after that. Won't talk to him. Not his mom. I'll talk more about the other side of that later. My childhood, even with the people around me and all the things that took place, I mean, it wasn't normal activities. It was definitely a lot of learning experience. A lot of learning the world, how it works, how people work, what it's like in the world from the bottom to the top and back down again. That's part of why I ended up marrying that woman, because we went through a lot together. She was one woman I truly loved. She was my first love. Like always, it turned into another nightmare. Put it at the very least.